The NBA's offseason is a time where all 30 teams get to take their time and assess how exactly they want to move forward. There are endless paths they could take, and every decision made impacts the next one, but based on their current roster makeup, their cap space, the draft picks they have available, amongst many other contributing factors, they all have one thing they need to prioritize above the rest, and that brings us to today's video. Today we will be going through every single NBA team, and we'll be picking out what their number one priority this offseason needs to be, meaning this is the most important thing that will be on their to-do lists. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting in the Eastern Conference going in alphabetical order, we'll begin with the Atlanta Hawks, and their number one priority this offseason is making a final decision on Trae Young's future with the team. The Hawks seem to be caught between a rebuild and a bounce back, and Trae Young is caught in the middle of it. He's due for a contract extension this offseason, which could be worth up to $228 million for 4 years, so the team not only needs to figure out if they are willing to offer him that much money, but also if they're not willing to lock him in long term for that much, then they need to decide whether they want to continue building around him in general or not. Next up is the Boston Celtics, and their top priority this offseason is shedding salary. With Jason Tatum out for most of, if not all of next season due to injury, and their chances at contending shrinking, it has forced the team to reevaluate their future much sooner than expected, and with the Celtics currently having the biggest payroll in the NBA going into next year, there's no longer any reason for them to be that deep in the luxury tax, so players like Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and possibly even Jaylen Brown with those big contracts may all find themselves on the trade block at some point. Next up is the Brooklyn Nets, and their biggest priority this offseason is to trade Cam Johnson. The Nets have an incredibly young team right now, and they also have the most cap space in the leagues this summer, so they're going to continue focusing on asset accumulation and player development, and with that being the case, Cam Johnson, coming off of the best season he's had in the league, should be used as trade bait so he can play meaningful basketball on a playoff team, and the Nets in return can acquire more assets for the future. Next is the Charlotte Hornets, and their number one priority this summer is finalizing a Mark Williams trade. The Hornets had a trade agreed upon to send Williams to the Lakers at the trade deadline this year, but it got nullified due to health complications. With the Hornets tipping their hand by doing that, it's probably best for everyone involved to try to actually get a deal over the line this time, because there are definitely teams that are in need of a center, but Williams and his injury woes have made it tough for the Hornets to keep him as a member of their main core. Next is the Chicago Bulls, and their top priority this offseason is to re-sign Josh Giddey without overspending. Contract extensions can make or break the direction of a team on the rise, because we've seen countless examples of players break out late in the season, get rewarded with a huge contract extension in the summer, and then immediately regress. So the Bulls need to find a price that doesn't hold them back from future moves, while also satisfying Giddey's camp enough to retain him and his playmaking abilities. Next is the Cleveland Cavaliers, and their biggest priority this offseason is to shed Isaac Okoro's salary. Last offseason, there was a long standoff between Okoro's camp and the Cavaliers before the team caved and gave him a contract extension worth about $11 million per year, but then Okoro came out this season and played the worst basketball of his career, and with guys like Max Strus, DeAndre Hunter, and even Dean Wade passing him up on the depth chart, Okoro is the odd man out needing to hit the trade block. Next is the Detroit Pistons, and their top priority this offseason is to re-sign Malik Beasley. Last offseason, it was abundantly clear that finding floor-spacing volume shooters was needed to elevate the team's offense, and lo and behold, the addition of Malik Beasley was a blessing that played a big part in the Pistons making it back to the playoffs. They can't afford to revert back to what the offense looked like before he injected his sharpshooting into it, so re-signing him in free agency is essential. Next is the Indiana Pacers, and their top priority this summer is to re-sign Miles Turner. Turner is the longest tenured current Pacer and an absolutely vital part of their newfound success. The Pacers have no reason to change things up now after all of the chemistry this team has built en route to the NBA Finals, so ensuring that Turner and his floor spacing and three-point shooting prowess get retained so he can continue anchoring the middle of the floor for them is vital. Next is the Miami Heat, and their top priority this offseason is to bolster their offense. The Heat have been one of the least efficient offenses amongst the teams that have made the playoffs for a few years now, and without Jimmy Butler anymore, things got even worse in this regard. Tyler Hero took a leap this year, but he's not realistically good enough to lead a contention-level offense. Bam Adebayo is the king of versatility, but is not a go-to scoring threat either, and players like Terry Rozier and Andrew Wiggins are not what they used to be, so finding scoring and playmaking, whether it be in free agency or via trade, is crucial. Next is the Milwaukee Bucks, and their top priority this offseason is to amicably part ways with Giannis Antetokounmpo. The word amicably is very important there because they really should go through this process ending it on good terms. Giannis will forever be a Milwaukee Bucks legend, but the fact of the matter is that there just isn't a realistic path back to the top for this group after Damian Lillard suffered a serious Achilles injury. Working with Giannis on a trade to get him to a contender while still managing to bring in a massive package in return would help kickstart a much needed rebuild, and it allows Giannis to get back to playing competitive basketball. Next is the New York Knicks, and their top priority this offseason is finding a head coach that will better utilize Karl Anthony Towns. The Knicks have a foundation to go all the way, they just didn't have the right combinations or the right game plans to execute at that level when it mattered most. Tom Thibodeau has been heavily criticized over the years for his lack of trust in his team's benches and for his offensive sets, and on this team, Towns found himself as an afterthought in the offense far more often than someone as skilled and talented as he is should be, so a coach that knows how to keep him engaged and involved is key to unlocking their offense. Next is the Orlando Magic, and their top priority this offseason is to trade for a star point guard. Enough is enough. The Magic simply cannot continue ignoring their glaring flaws any further. This is a promising young team fully bought into dominating on the defensive end, but their offense is horrific compared to other playoff teams, and the lack of creativity and playmaking makes life incredibly difficult for Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. They need to prove they're serious about getting this team to the next level, and they can do that by getting aggressive, trying to trade for one of the league's many star point guards capable of running the offense more efficiently. Next is the Philadelphia 76ers, and their top priority this offseason is to make the right decision with the number 3 pick in the draft. The Sixers are in a tough spot overall and with their options at number 3 because this is a class with a clear top 2, and then the debates begin. Ace Bailey is a popular choice, but has glaring struggles with creating space and making the right reads. They could trade back, but finding a sweet spot to make it worth it may be difficult. And a final option is packaging it for a win-now player, which I believe is the worst option of all. So whatever they do with the pick, they need to be absolutely sure that it will help them in the long run. Next is the Toronto Raptors, and their top priority this offseason is to strengthen the center position. The Raptors are shifting back towards making playoff runs after the moves they've made this season, but Jakob Poeltl is the only center under contract next year. Poeltl is fine, but he's one of the worst starting centers in the league, and realistically is better served as a backup, so upgrading there would solidify their chances to make it back to the playoffs. Next is the Washington Wizards, and their top priority this offseason is to exchange their expiring contracts for assets. The Wizards are not close to making a playoff run yet, still firmly in the midst of their rebuild phase, so players like Marcus Smart, Chris Middleton, and Richaun Holmes all represent veteran players that could help playoff teams in the short term, and those teams would likely be willing to give up draft capital to acquire them, which fits into the Wizards' timeline much more. Now over to the Western Conference teams. Next up is the Dallas Mavericks, and their top priority this summer is to trade Kyrie Irving. Winning the lottery and getting the #1 pick in the draft to bring in Cooper Flagg really saved the future of this franchise, which was honestly a sinking ship prior to that going down. Having a pillar for the future makes it a lot easier to try to salary dump someone like Kyrie Irving, because now they don't necessarily need to desperately try to re-sign him, hoping that he can return to form at his age after a serious ACL tear. Next is the Denver Nuggets, and their top priority this offseason is to trade Michael Porter Jr. The Nuggets are at a point where they need to get serious about retooling to stay in contention, or else Nikola Jokic is going to grow frustrated. They're severely handicapped by Michael Porter Jr.'s max contract clogging the payroll, and his play on the court is not coming close to justifying his salary, so getting him off the books in favor of adding depth and flexibility is a must. Next is the Golden State Warriors, and their top priority this offseason is to make a final decision on Jonathan Kuminga's future. Kuminga is a restricted free agent this summer, but the 4 years he spent on the Warriors have been a roller coaster. He has undeniable talent and upside, but coach Steve Kerr has shown he struggles mightily to trust him consistently, and if the team doesn't view him as an essential piece to their puzzle, then they need to just let him walk so he can go somewhere that will actually focus on his development. Next is the Houston Rockets, and their top priority this summer is to go star hunting. The Rockets shocked everybody by finishing as the 2 seed this year, but in order to start actually being taken serious as a contender, they need to find themselves a true #1 option. They're an incredibly deep team with a gritty toughness on defense that keeps them in it with anybody, but their offense isn't where a contending team's offense needs to be, and it's because they don't have a single star scorer to lean on when the going gets tough. So with so many movable assets at their disposal, it's time to unload the treasure chest. Next is the Los Angeles Lakers, and their top priority this offseason is to handle James Harden's free agency better than Daryl Morey did. The Clippers are now finding themselves in a very similar situation to what the 76ers were in a few years ago, with Harden likely opting out of his player option and hitting free agency, and if the Clippers want to bring him back, they need to be all in on doing so. Hesitating and going back and forth with the money they're willing to pay him will only make him mad, as we saw with his reaction to Daryl Morey a few years ago, and he'll be able to find other offers elsewhere. Next is the Los Angeles Lakers, and their top priority this offseason is to find a starting center. The Lakers trading for Luka Doncic was the biggest blessing in the world for their long-term outlook, but in the short term, it left this roster without a single playable big man. The center position is key to a good defense as long as they can protect the rim, and this roster in particular is desperate for rim protection, so they need to do whatever they can to fix that. Next is the Memphis Grizzlies, and their top priority this offseason is to sign Jaren Jackson Jr. to a contract extension. The Grizzlies flamed out a bit at the end of this season, but that's not a reason to overreact to anything. Jaren Jackson Jr. is essential to what they do as a 20-point scorer who also happens to be a Defensive Player of the Year winner, and they should not hesitate to get him signed to a long-term extension because he only has 1 year left on his contract as things currently stand. Next is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and their top priority this offseason is to upgrade at point guard. Mike Conley has had an incredible long career, but he's just no longer good enough to be a starting point guard if the team wants to go all the way. At 37 years of age, his play has regressed dramatically, and he mustered up averages of just 4 points and 2 assists per game in the conference finals, which doesn't cut it from the starter at arguably the most important position. Next is the New Orleans Pelicans, and their top priority this summer is to improve the team's spacing. The Pelicans were one of the league's biggest disappointments this season, mostly because of injury struggles, but even at full strength, this is a group without many surefire knockdown shooters. In today's NBA, you need to be able to keep defenses honest from the outside, and it would also make Zion Williamson's life a lot easier in the paint if it wasn't so clogged up. Next is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and their top priority this offseason is to make a trade that prioritizes versatility. The Thunder simply have too many assets, and there aren't enough roster spots to keep them all. 14 players are under contract for next season, and they have 3 more draft picks to make in this draft, so the math is not adding up. They have the power to put together a competitive offer for pretty much any skill set they may need, and under these circumstances, they kind of have to. Next is the Phoenix Suns, and their top priority this offseason is getting rid of Bradley Beal. Trading for Bradley Beal was a huge mistake, and now he and his Supermax contract plus no trade clause are their biggest problem. They have no realistic way to improve their roster with no money to spend and no worthwhile draft picks or players to trade, so finding a way to get Beal to waive his no trade clause and then shipping him out has to be the first step. Next is the Portland Trail Blazers, and their top priority this offseason is to solidify their pecking order. What I mean by this is that they currently have a lot of players on the fringe of importance on their roster, and in order to move forward, they need to establish which young players they are actually going to invest in and which ones are expendable. There aren't enough minutes to go around, and crowded rotations stunt the growth of players that should be prioritized, so some difficult decisions need to be made now. Next is the Sacramento Kings, and their top priority this offseason is to add a starting point guard. Domantas Sabonis emphasized how badly the team needs one in his exit interview for the season, and the front office needs to listen. Players like Zach LaVine and Malik Monk are very talented guards, but neither have the playmaking skills to run point, and in order for an offense to healthily function, they need a reliable ball handler running the show to make the lives of the scorers easier. Next is the San Antonio Spurs, and their top priority this summer is to add shooters around Victor Wembanyama. As long as Wemby returns to form next season after his injury, this is a group ready to go full speed ahead. They got their point guard in De'Aaron Fox. They could potentially add another star point guard of the future in the draft by taking Dylan Harper, giving them more than enough playmaking to set Wemby up. They have athletic defenders. They just need to space the floor more so Wemby can operate. The Spurs were in the bottom third of the league in three-point shooting, and without Chris Paul next year, they could get even worse, so that is a big point of emphasis. And finally, the last team up is the Utah Jazz, and their top priority this offseason is to not let themselves get antsy. It's tough being a rebuilding team without a real identity yet, and it would be very easy for the Jazz to rush things by making a hasty trade to try to speed things up, but there isn't a single move they can make right now that would put them into any kind of contention, so it's best to just stay par for the course, add through the draft, and continue to develop what they have. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you want to see your favorite team do this offseason. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.